Yeah, we like to fuck woolly mammoths.
Shut up, Michael. You're the only one who likes to fuck that thing.
Hey, fuck you. At least I'm not in a shit play.
Womp, womp,
Wah,
womp.
wah, wah, wah. Anyway, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Welcome to the Smoke Pit.
What up, though?
So we are doing a bonus episode because of all our homies in lockdown.
Because some of us have off and some of us are quarantined.
Yeah, so all these states are declaring national states of emergency. The country is in a state of pandemic. Shit's crazy.
Yeah, and just for those of you who are going out there trying to find yourself a container of toilet paper, how much do you think you're going to need to poop?
No, seriously, like, you just do like we used to do in the barracks when you're just like massively hungover, and you just stumble into the shower that you probably share with like the adjoining barracks room.
Look, I thought I was totally being gross by saying, if we run out of toilet paper, who gives a shit? Because I got that like extra shower head that I can like detach. And then Katie Sackhoff, who used to be like my absolute favorite when she was on Battlestar Galactica back in the day.
Yeah.
She tweeted exactly that. She was like, worst case scenario, I run out of toilet paper, I'm going to hop in my shower and just rinse myself off because I'm not a disgusting turd.
Yeah, and then you waffle stomp the turd down the grate.
Well, I mean, if you just eat enough fiber, you don't have to worry about waffle stomping it too hard. You like waffle mush it.
No, I would disagree, kind and gentle sir. Fiber actually makes your turds larger. It makes them a little softer, but it makes them larger because it like...
Yes, bigger, but
Yeah.
more soft. So you can like... Okay, so when you're washing dishes, right?
Yeah.
You got some goop on there, and you put your faucet on maximum hot.
Oh, yeah.
And you spray it down because you're like, yeah, this will melt off all that crap. Same thing. Just set the hose in your shower to maximum heat. Put it right up against your poop chute so you get maximum amount of pressure, and you're good to go. If your butthole starts turning to bright pink, it's time to stop.
Yeah, like Rick and Morty, when you need the doctor's appointment for the discolored butt flaps. All right, and so for those of you who live in the barracks and probably A, don't have hot water, and B, don't have a hose,
and C, you're coughing all over each other because you've got coronavirus.
yeah, we're doing this episode for you. Wah, wah, wah. Wah, 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 wah. So my girlfriend's here and heard all of that. Hi, hun.
Oh, hi, honey.
All right, so this is Samantha. She is currently a reservist and going to ROTC program in Pennsylvania, on track to become an officer, and she put me on to some murder podcasts. So we decided that it would be a great opportunity for us to take this bonus episode to kind of cash in on a little bit of one of the more popular trends.
Yes, and this is the one time Daniel will let me say murder on repeat without giving me a hard time about it in public.
Yeah, in public, that's the point. You're not supposed to say murder on repeat in public.
I'm an American, sir, and I'm covered under the First Amendment. I say whatever the fuck I want.
If I'm standing on it, it is America.
Exactly that. My boots were on it. It was America. The First Amendment counts.
So we are going to talk about some serial killers, but with a fun little smoke pit twist. These serial killers were former military. Bum, bum, bum.
Wah, wah, wah.
Well, mine was like for drama and emphasis. You went back
Dun,
to the
dun,
Brazilian like
dun.
reggaeton like disco club.
Yes, because I'm excited about this topic, Daniel.
Murder. Wah, wah, wah.
Murder, 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 murder.
Okay.
All right, so before we kick this off, we have a few definitions that we want to cover first. All right, for those of you who aren't into all those murder Netflix documentaries and stuff, correct yourself because you're about to learn a little bit about something.
We're going to smash some knowledge into your head while you on quarantine.
If you don't know, you better ask somebody.
Hey, Netflix and Chill works really well if you watch one of those shows with the murder documentaries.
Cool. So, according to the FBI, the general definition of a spree killer is someone or more than one person who commits 2 or more murders without a cooling off period. The lack of a cooling off period marks the difference between a spree killer and a serial killer. So now we know what that is. A mass murderer is defined as killing a large number of people, usually in one place. So that's the difference between like a spree killer and a mass murderer, and then you have a serial killer.
Right. So a spree killer can be someone who, say, shoots the teller at the bank and then drives down the road and then goes to get McDonald's and then shoots the lady at McDonald's.
Basically, me playing Grand Theft Auto.
Correct. So the difference between a mass murder is a mass murderer would be someone like the Columbine kids who like shoot a bunch of people in one spot. Like they're just trying to cause maximum casualties in one area.
So a little bit of a disclaimer: we do not condone murder. We do condone killing the enemy in accordance with the Geneva Convention and your rules of engagement.
If you're a religious individual, do remember that the Bible makes a distinction between killing and murder. It says, "Thou shalt not murder," not "Thou shalt not kill."
Yep, and we're never one to try to force our beliefs on other people. But however, it is good to educate yourself. I think Ecclesiastes 3:3 says there's a time to kill and a time to heal. And how the whole thing, like David, slew Goliath because of God's instructions. So like we can say that morally there's a difference between killing and murder, and we're talking about murder.
Right. Murder is
bad.
Murder is the killing of someone for no other reason than you feel like it.
Because you have a little pee-pee.
Right. You have an absolutely tiny pee-pee.
The tiniest of pee-pees.
That is actually like a reason why a serial killer became a serial killer.
Oh, we'll get to that. I have never lied on this show. People will watch this show in 20 years and compare me to The Simpsons, okay? I have never lied on this show.
Well, lie is a strong term. Exaggerate.
You live such a crazy life that you give me structure, and then the chaos what am I looking for?
The chaos weaves its way through.
Yes, there we go. It weaves its way through.
See,
okay,
that's my whole lifestyle. Organized chaos.
Organized fucking chaos. So back to serial killers. Sam, in your definition, what is a serial killer?
When I was 12, I learned what a serial killer was. So in my own definition, it was someone who would kill about like 3 people at least over a course of months, years, what have you. They have a cooling off period in between each kill, and they're typically sexually motivated.
So why were you learning this at 12 years old?
I was really interested. I was bored, and I would just I honestly don't remember what sparked it, but I was just always interested in like the macabre.
Okay, because I too was curious at 12, and I started looking into the feasibility of Transformers. Found out that those weren't actually a real thing, and was quite disappointed.
Yeah, I was super into ion engines for space travel, and then I realized that NASA had figured that out back in the 70s, and I was like, oh, great.
Fuck.
Fuck.
Yeah, fucking nerds.
I was like, damn it, I thought I was going to be the best nerd. Turns out I was behind the times.
So this isn't 100% inclusive. So serial killers, somebody who does 3 or more kills, sometimes more, sometimes less, generally has an MO, which is Latin for...
Modus operandi.
Modus operandi, which basically means what the fuck they like to do.
So you'll hear a lot of times that when you watch, say, detective stories, you'll hear that the 3 things they look for when they're trying to find a suspect is means, motive, and opportunity, right? Means is the MO, right? It's the way in which they kill people. When you have a serial killer, they tend to, not always, but they generally tend to have a methodology, right? They have the early experimental period where they kind of try out different stuff and figure out how they like to kill, and then they refine that process. So you'll have one that likes to use knives. They're going to always use knives. It's very rare that they're going to jump into some other thing.
Again, don't be a serial killer. If you're currently listening and you are, correct yourself.
Well, honestly, with people who have who end up being serial killers have this period of time where they're very confused and they're like trying really hard to understand themselves, and it's really hard. So at that point, I encourage anyone who's having these weird, horrible thoughts to go see a therapist, and it's always going to be better that way.
Yeah, and so we've done a lot of research into this. 30 minutes of furiously Googling before the episode. And a lot of serial killers were former military. Some of the ones you may have heard of were the Son of Sam, Jeffrey Dahmer, Dean Coral, a.k.a. the Candyman.
The Candyman actually only spent 10 months in the military.
Yeah.
He got drafted, and then he was like, this is super hard, and I'd like to get out, please.
Actually, they let him go home because his mom had a problem at the candy factory.
Well, that's the thing. He was like, this is super hard. He did claim, you're right, he claimed family hardship.
They wanted him out.
They were like, you're super weird, and you're like a cook anyway, so just get out of here.
Yeah, so we have all picked a different serial killer that we kind of want to profile in this mini bonus episode.
So really quick before we get into that, I'd like to also mention something else in the general vein of we don't endorse serial killing or murder of any kind.
Yes.
Is that Sam and I were talking earlier about I like to call it the psychopathy trifecta, but there's an actual term for it, which is...
The McDonald's triad.
Which is?
Typically it's killing animals from a very young age, wetting the bed way into, like, their teens, and hitting their head when they're young. Did I say that?
There's also setting fires.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's... The triad is the 3 main ones. So it's hitting the head, wetting the bed, and killing animals. And then there goes into other things like
do
setting
all
fires.
of those 3 things now. So
See, no, you don't.
This is the benefit of the podcast.
Yeah.
I never heard the hitting the head thing. I've always heard the wetting the bed, killing animals, and setting fires.
So I do all of those things.
But arson is one of kind of be kind of an easy thing to pick up. So the hitting the head thing.
Well,
makes
a lot
sense
of
to me.
serial killers start off doing smaller things. So like, arson and like thievery would also play into like them testing the waters before they can make their big kill.
Like petty crime.
Yeah, petty crime. Petty crime is them just being like, can I get away with this? Because a lot of serial killers are also narcissists who think that they're too smart for the cops to get caught. So, and then they got caught.
Of course they did, because they're turds.
Of
And
course.
the law always wins.
Do you guys remember the TV show Dexter?
Only 100% yes.
It started off really good, and then like I think they tried to shove down his wife and a few other elements down the viewers' throats that really didn't land.
The wife worked out pretty well at first, because I think she kind of lent some empathy to him. That the general, like, his whole backstory was kind of a little bit sad, so you felt for him for a little while, and then the more it went into it, you kind of like, but he's still murdering people. And then Rita was like, oh, but I love you even though you're so damaged. And then I think Rita ends up getting murdered too.
Did you know that there's a serial killer who's inspired by Dexter?
Well, of course
there is.
There's a Canadian killer, and I cannot remember his name at the moment, but he was very, very inspired by Dexter, and he wanted to kill cheating husbands. And he ended up killing a single man who just wanted to find love. I think they met literally on Tinder, and he just killed him just because he thought he was pathetic or something, and it was awful. It was just so sad.
Was that serial killer a goose? Because it's the only Canadian I know of that's evil.
Yes, all goose deserve murder. I think I will have to amend our statement. Murder geese. That's perfectly okay.
No, that's killing geese, because geese deserve
the death.
They are second in evil only to emperor penguins.
Emperor, I would fucking love to meet an emperor penguin.
I would love to meet an emperor penguin. Okay, so Dan knows, and Sam, now you're about to find out.
Okay.
One of the trips, we do a lot of international travel whenever we can, and one of the trips I really want to do is go to Antarctica, right? And it's super hard, it's crazy expensive, and there's only so many people that get to go down there a year because of the conservation effort and not having, stuff fall apart. But I'm gonna find my way down there. I'm gonna find an emperor penguin, and I'm gonna hoof it right in the front butt.
I think that's illegal.
Oh, it's hella illegal.
So why are you gonna do it?
I'm sorry. Have you seen an emperor penguin?
Aren't they like 4 feet tall?
Yeah, they're ridiculously tall for a bird that's not evil. Okay, and
is that the only reason why you think that
they're dressed like James Bond villains?
James Bond villains are inspired by the penguin.
I think we're getting a little off topic.
I don't know what to tell you.
Alexander.
The point is, we're gonna boot some penguins at some point in the future, and by the time we do, it won't be illegal because there'll be an evil menace that's trying to melt the ice core.
Most zoos let penguins walk around in the wintertime.
Yeah, we saw penguins when we were in Australia. I saw penguins in the wild when I was in Peru, which is a crazy thing to think about. Not a lot of people have seen penguins in the wild. Like, I was real close to the Galapagos Islands. It was kind of like the poor man's version is what they called it. So, like, if you didn't have enough money to go to the actual Galapagos Islands that on National Geographic, you go to these poor ones.
So you went to the knockoff Galapagos?
Yes, I went to the Walmart of Galapagos. Instead of going to the Target of Galapagos, went to the Walmart of it, and I got to see penguins in the wild. Back to the murder.
Let's talk about some murder.
Okay. So, the first person we're going to talk about is Dickface Arthur Shaw Dickface.
Please tell me his name is actually Dickface, Arthur
well,
Shaw Dickface.
I'm going to refer to it as that because I don't feel like we should be glamorizing these people.
Good.
That's one of the reasons they don't give them names anymore.
Yeah. Because
Yep. That'll come to my case a lot.
Yes.
That's all they want.
There was that comedian that was just like, instead of giving them like cool nicknames like the Midnight Slasher.
Was it like we called Micro Penis the Micro Penis Murderer?
Yeah.
And Billy the Dickhead.
Yeah. So, Dickhead Arthur Shaw Dickhead was sentenced to life in prison for a series of murders between 1972 and 1989. So, fun fact: before that, he served a tour of duty in Vietnam, where he boasted about all these badass combat exploits, such as cutting off people's heads and nailing them to trees as a warning to the Viet Cong. The army came back and was like, "Yeah, no, he never saw combat."
Oh damn!
Yeah, they're like, "No, he was an armor.
Use a boot."
Yeah, he was a pogue. He never was in the front line. Like, he wasn't even one of the pogue groups that like went out and got some. You know, like no, like this dude was. They used the term nowhere near a jungle.
Damn.
Straight up called this fucking dude a piece of shit. And he actually had claimed to have committed his first murders while he served in Vietnam, killing 2 young local girls and then eating their bodies. Turns out the only thing he was eating was dick.
Oh damn.
Okay. So he was allegedly a frequent bedwetter. There you go. He liked to start fires.
There you go.
He had an overbearing mother who would allegedly sodomize him with foreign objects. He also allegedly had relations with his aunt and his sister. The family denies these claims.
Mommy issues is also a common thing that you see in serial killers. Like you see it with Ed Gein.
Lots of Oedipal complexes.
Yes. Well, that's Ed Gein. I wouldn't say a lot of that, but there's always mommy issues.
I've seen the movie Psycho. It's definitely a lot of weird psychosexual issues with their mothers.
It's usually just psychosexual. It's sexual sadism a lot.
Can you explain to our listeners who are not familiar with that term what that means?
Which one? Sexual sadism.
Any of them. You said like 4 things that I didn't understand, and I tried to pawn it off on the listeners.
Okay.
Please educate me. I don't know what any of that means.
Please explain to Daniel what psychosexual means.
Actually, you take that one because I'm gonna screw it up somehow. I'll take sexual sadism.
Sexual sadism being the easier of the two.
Yes, of course.
All right, give us that one first.
Okay, sexual sadism would be finding sexual pleasure from inflicting pain on another individual. So that's pretty much the motive for a lot of serial killers, is that the pain they get to see from their victims is what encourages them to keep killing.
So, like, if you're an individual that derives pleasure from that, you're fucked up. Like,
now hold on a second.
Now you're defending them?
I'm not defending anything. I'm saying that everything comes with degrees, right? Humanity is all about degrees. So there's parts of it that are understandable. Like, if you have, for example, a woman who likes to get a little smack on the tush, right? Like, she likes to get smacked just a little bit, like just right on the booty meat, just like a little blap, right? That's deriving pleasure from pain, because nobody likes to get whapped, right? But occasionally a woman likes to get a little. Right?
Oh my god!
Well,
but some people
you waited to the serial killer episode to start talking about your sick bedroom pleasures.
This is not about me. I'm making a point generally about a broad spectrum of humanity. Are you recording right now?
Yes, obviously.
Oh, of course you are. So here's the thing. I'm saying that there's a large number of people who like to get a little smack on the tush, right? Or, get their hair pulled or whatever, right? That's deriving pleasure from pain. That is a normal amount of exploration that's not weird or psychopathic. But if you have people who literally want to hurt you until you're in great amounts of pain, or hurt people who can't defend themselves, like the elderly or the young, that's when it turns into like a sexual sadist.
And funny enough, that's actually a part of how he got caught, and I'll get to that. Fun fact about what's up.
Sorry. Just like a good example of like that kind of a problem happening is John Wayne Gacy. He killed out of what he thought was self-defense, And then when he realized that it was a mistake and that he just accidentally killed someone who wasn't coming at him with a knife, but just making him breakfast, he realized that he came. And so once he realized that he got off on killing, he continued to do it. And that's that's like he had two paths to choose from and he chose the wrong one. So
I don't know if I could. I don't know if I could like just be sitting there and like somebody's just like, hey, you want some toast? I'm like, wow, and like blast them, and I'm like, oh god, I came too. Like,
well, that's the difference. That's the difference between you, who may occasionally like, choke somebody a little bit or whatever, and a person who is a psychosexual, sexual sadist who murders because it makes them feel good.
No, don't get me wrong. I like to choke people in a jujitsu sense. Okay, calm down, little one.
Oh, only a jujitsu sense.
We like to refer to that as murder yoga, right? It's kind of like it's like solving a Rubik's Cube. Anybody, I don't care who you are, has the ability to get choked out. And so if you have an opponent and you can figure out the best way to choke them out, it's like solving a puzzle, But like I'm not sitting there like once I get the tap, I'm not like, oh god, I just came on your back. Like
erroneous.
What?
Remember that time in Palm Springs we were down in that pool and you were like, I'm going to choke you out. And I was like, haha, no, you're not. And then you came a little and I was like,
hey, that was Palm Springs. There's literally something in the water that makes everyone a little homoerotic, okay? It's like one of the gayest cities in America. You do not put that shame on me. I will not have you.
Hey, I'm not kink shaming you, okay? If choking out people gets you off, then choking out people gets you off. As long as it's a consensual adult thing, it's fine. I'm simply saying that when it gets okay, so my personal thing is I have rules, right?
Again, you waited to the serial killer episode.
I'm simply again, I've stated this in the past on the show. I'm just going into a little bit of detail to make the difference between what a normal person considers acceptable and what is considered sexual sadism. So I have rules, and my rules include I don't cause any kind of damage that I have to explain to the police. No blood, right? No anything like that. Because there's a difference between I like getting my hair pulled, not me, but like a person I'm with, saying, I want you to pull my hair and smack me a little, right? That's okay, fine. But I'm not going to cause a bunch of bruising, right? I'm not going to like cut anybody or cause any permanent damage.
Yeah, so what I think is really interesting about this case is the fact that he was actually jailed for killing 2 children in 1972, but he got out early on parole. And I couldn't find if this parole was because of this or it was a previous parole, but he actually got released early on parole because he saved the life of a prison guard after a riot broke out in the facility. So, like, this is kind of like when you talk about the psychology of killers, like some of them have very strict rules as to like what meets their qualification, like Dexter, right? Some aren't that serious, but the majority of them that we're going to talk about, most of them killed either women or children, but a lot of them were like prostitutes because they viewed them as like lesser people,
subhuman.
Yeah, like subhuman. So like in this guy's mind, the prison guard deserved to live, and he actually risked his own safety to save the prison guard, but then he goes out and murders 14 women.
Well, because, and again, every serial killer has their origin story, just like a villain in a comic book, right? And the villains in comic books are evil, just like serial killers are evil. So I'm not endorsing this, but you always have to look. They're made. They're not born. So there's always some event that happened.
I don't agree with that. I think some of them are born.
I think if it's like brain trauma or psychopathy that can't be helped, but there's plenty of examples of people who are psychopathic or sociopathic that they couldn't empathize or connect to other people, but they knew enough about how society worked because you could be psychopathic and not stupid.
Well, of course not, but like,
right.
That's the thing is that you see a lot of like CEOs have a common trait, and it's either I'm actually not going to say it because I don't know what it is, but you commonly see hedonistic personality and narcissism within your serial killers because they think that they're just so perfect and smart, no one's ever going to catch them. They can do whatever they want because they're so perfect.
No, I get that. And so I agree with both of you that in some cases, like a serial killer is either made or they're born with like some sort of like fucked up disposition to like make them more likely to become that way. In my instance, like I grew up with like fucked up childhood, abuse, trauma, stuff like that. I go into the military and I like to slay me some bodies, right? And they said, hey, if you slay the wrong bodies, you'll go to the brig and you won't be able to slay bodies anymore. So that's why I only slayed the right bodies.
But that's the thing. That's exactly what we're talking about. If you, let's say you grew up a Rockefeller, right? And so you're a psychopath, but you're also a Rockefeller. So you were taught from an early age, this is what society expects from you, and this is what you will get if you can follow the line, right? If you can stay within the box, you can be the CEO. You can be the leader of the company. You can run this multi-million-dollar agency. Just don't fucking murder anybody or do anything terrible to physically hurt human beings, right? Just hurt them with your bottom line, but don't hurt them in person.
But that's the thing, is that like people who end up being serial killers will have like either a horrible childhood or they'll have a great childhood.
That's exactly my point.
I think that they would be more likely to be, there's something within them that causes them to be serial killers, because anyone can go through a trauma in their childhood and come out fine. But the problem is that these people who were traumatized or abused in some type of way or not anything at all end up being these serial killers.
And that's exactly my point. Is you have,
so like the trauma can be a catalyst if you already have a disposition to be that way.
Right.
Yes.
So you can have a disposition for a lot of things. Like you can, there's plenty of examples of people who are, for example, like gay, right?
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. But back in the day, let's say 50 years ago, right? If you were born in 1950 and you grew up in the 1970s, you couldn't exactly be the CEO of a company if you were out and you were gay.
Okay.
Right? Did you do anything wrong? No, you're just born a certain way. That's fine. But did you murder people? No. You just went about your business. You
murdered that ass, though.
I mean, probably. But you understood the box that society was.
I love how skeptical he is. He's like, I don't know, probably. Like,
I mean, I don't know if they murdered that ass or not. A lot of people probably.
He's like, only I murdered the ass.
I mean, not that ass. I like to keep myself in.
Big dick murder demon.
Quite. But my point is that they people can you could be psychotic, and I'm not equating gay with psychotic, by the way. That
Obviously,
was just,
yeah.
That was a parallel analogy.
Yeah.
But you could be psychotic and still understand where the box is and to stay inside the box. And a big part of what the differential is between a person who goes outside the box and a person who stays in the box is how much trauma did you experience and how fucked up your childhood was. And who did what to you and who allowed you to do what.
Okay. So to wrap my story up, so basically the way that they got wise to him was that he did have this very specific idea of when he should kill. But he also liked prostitutes, which a lot of serial killers tend to do.
A lot of other people like prostitutes, too.
Well, serial killers go after prostitutes because they know that the police won't look into it as much because they see them as lesser human. They call them the undead, I think, or the
overlooked or
the non-dead or something like along those lines, where if you like, this happens a lot where serial killers will see them as easy targets because no one's going to look into them.
Yeah, and so basically this there was all these murders and stuff happening, and one of the seasoned prostitutes in the area came to the police and she was like, "Hey, look, I've been doing this for a while, all right? I've been getting paid to suck dick for years. You understand that?" And I'm assuming she just had gums for teeth.
And a southern accent for some reason.
Prostitutes can be classy.
No, escorts are classy.
Yeah, the kind of prostitutes who get stabbed to death in the alley somewhere usually aren't the classier, more expensive variety.
But that that doesn't deserve. They deserve to be murdered, Alexander.
I mean, I didn't say that. No human being, regardless of their occupation.
Can I finish my story, please? I know the both of you are big brains. I've been trying to get through this one story for 20 minutes now.
Man, how the tables have turned.
This is what you get for going first.
All right, so she went to the cops and she was just like, "Man, this guy likes to smack me up, she." And they're like,
So first they were from the South, and now they're from Boston in the 20s?
Yes. She had her Tommy gun. She's like, "Man, if he comes back around here, she's
going to get a whole fistful of lead, see?"
And then she, shot her name into the wall. It was like, "Harry Georgette was here, she."
That's how she filed her police report. She just shot her name into all the paperwork.
Nobody bid on Harry Georgette. Nobody.
I mean,
Oh my
whether
God.
she's hairy or not is her business, right? Hashtag 2020, hashtag feminism.
What is
So-
what is your hashtag? Hashtag woke king.
Yeah. Hashtag woke king.
Woke king.
And so she was like, yeah, this guy gives me the creeps, and that's really hard for me to do on account of how much of a whore that I am.
Jesus.
And so you should look out for this guy, and this is what he drives, and this is what he looks like. He wanted me to play dead while he choked me and beat me up, and I didn't want to do that. So like, all right, cool. So now we kind of have an idea of who we're looking for. And so the local police department was just baffled by all these murders, so they called in the FBI and all these additional resources, and they had a surveillance plane out. And if I get parts of this fucking story wrong, go fuck yourself. Like, I did my best,
surveillance
okay?
plane?
Yeah.
I'm intrigued. You had me at surveillance plane.
What
Please-
year is this?
Please
I
do
think
go on.
89?
All the worst years.
And
Just because you weren't alive for them doesn't make them bad.
No.
Everybody
you
was
look
skinny
into
because of all the
twerk-
coke.
Okay, exactly. There you
That's
go.
a good thing.
can I
No.
finish my story?
Go ahead. You had me in surveillance plane, sir. Go ahead. I want to hear this.
And so they're doing their plane, and the weather is really bad, and this is in New York, and the weather's really bad, and they're like, all right, like, we're going to call it. But then some dude was like, wait a second, I see a dead body. And so they're like looking, and they see this like this woman who's like halfway sticking out of the ground, and she's nude, and they're like, oh, fuck, we think that's a dead body because it's near a river. A lot of serial killers kill near rivers.
Rivers are a good way to get rid of evidence.
Mhm.
Yeah, and so then they take the fucking binoculars, and then they like look up, and this motherfucker is standing over the body, peeing on it next to his van. And they're like, that's the motherfucker. And he sees the plane, and he boogies out. And so they put out the APB, eventually track him down at some nursing home, and they're like, Mashy, we caught you, confess. And he was just like, oh, sorry, like, I don't have any ID because it was taken because I was convicted for manslaughter. And they're like, super weird thing to say, come with us.
So I have to have a clarifying question. You were just really on a roll, and I didn't want to stop you. When you said they were from, you were in New York, right? We're talking like New York City or like New York State.
State, I believe.
So they were like somewhere outside of the filth-encrusted cesspool that is New York City.
We were just in New York City. We had a
It's not
lovely
that
time.
Bad.
Yeah, we got some Jewish bagels.
They were very good.
They were very good. They had a sign that said Jewish eating for Gentiles. It was nice.
Oh, that is true.
Yeah.
The Jewish do make an excellent bagel.
So they caught this guy, and then he starts bragging about all the fucking innocent people he killed in Vietnam and all, and then the case where he got convicted for killing the 2 kids and served 14 years but got paroled. And they're like, okay, that's like super random, but these teeth marks from her match your teeth marks.
Sir, we just asked you if you wanted a cup of coffee.
Exactly.
And so this dude gets sentenced to like 200 years because they found him guilty of like a shit ton of murders, and they sent him to jail. And like he was just like, my mom used to sodomize me, and she was like, the fuck I did, like, what is wrong with you, boy? And long story short, he died in 2008 after suffering a heart attack.
Good.
And I watched part of this dude's interview. This dude was a piece of shit. Like, fuck him. I hope he's a ghost, and like the ghost of a bull is like giving him the business on a daily basis. So fuck this guy.
I will say my one argument I have several arguments against capital punishment.
Yeah.
My predominant argument is why are you going to let them get off easy? Like Henry Rollins, who's one of my personal favorite human beings, once said, he goes, you can't murder people like Slobodan Milosevic, right? That dude should be in a cell 12 hours a day, chiseling the name of his victims up against a wall, and for the rest of his day, he needs to be like mentioning them out loud. You don't get to just take a needle in the arm and have the big sleep.
Yeah, and that's fair. And it's like in America we have the laws against cruel and unusual punishment. Not saying that I'm advocating for this or supporting this shithole country in any way, but Iran doesn't have a lot of the same problems that we do because like if you get caught stealing, they'll cut a hand off. And I'm not saying that's the solution, but like the whole idea that like you shouldn't be punished, but then I'm also conflicted because of like what all these watchdog agencies exonerate these people through DNA evidence. And like that's one of my biggest fucking fears is that I get convicted of something. Like I donated hair, All right. What if some girl who had cancer and now she wants revenge on the world? She's got my wig and she leaves one of my hair streams at a murder, and they look at my fucking dossier and they're like, "Oh, this guy's clearly a fucking serial killer. He served in the military. Look at all this trauma from his youth. Look at all these battered children's shelters he was in, and then I go to jail."
Yeah, except you're on the podcast at least once a week, so you'd probably be either here.
But I also go all over the world. Like, we just got back from France.
He got extra screening because he's fancy pants and travels all over the place.
Yeah, they saw my Russian visa and my passport, and they were like, "Over here."
So here's the thing. It turns out that despite the fact that I work for the U.S. government, DHS has flagged me as a flight risk. So I went for several years. Every time I go through Amsterdam to come home, it's like a 3-hour layover. It's not like I was going out to any of the Amsterdam bakeries or anything. But they'd stop me and be like, "Herr Pfeffer, you have extra screenings." And everybody who got extra screenings was all 6 foot plus, usually white people, usually with beards, and usually all in the same line of work as me. And they'd be like, "Oh, you got selected for," air quotes, "additional random screenings." That was the 5th time. I was like, "Listen, lady, it's not random if it's every time. I know it's not your fault, but can you explain it to me?" She's like, "Oh, DHS flagged you." I was like, "Great. I'm glad the government I work for thinks I'm a threat." Awesome.
I mean, that would explain the way they treat you.
I would say, the government, I do say some things off hours because I get frustrated with certain things because, of course, you do, working for the government bureaucracy. But I'd say all in all, out of a 17-year career, the government's treated me mostly well.
All right, then, now that he said that legal disclaimer.
There are certain times when I was in the Marine Corps where I could have hucked a guy, I could have yeeted a dude through a window and not felt the least bit of empathy or whatever for him.
Speaking of a lack of empathy, that's another trait that a lot of these sick motherfuckers have in common. And who is your subject?
So I have 2 guys. I wanted to cover Leonard Hill, and he had a partner, which is a little bit more rare than your average serial killer. His name was Charles Ng. I'm probably not pronouncing his name right. It's NG.
Who cares?
That's the Americanized
Charles Dickface.
Charles Cockbag. Yeah, that was the American version of his name, which turns out he was actually not native-born American.
Yeah,
which is not a problem. But his paperwork was faked in order to get him into the military.
Charles Dick so little his pubes covered it.
Right, Charles nothing but bush and a mole underneath.
These 2 guys, all right, so they took a break from tossing each other salad 24/7
Well, here's the thing.
to commit murders.
So here's the thing. It's interesting you mentioned the salad tossing because that was legitimately a part of the thing.
What?
So
Never lied.
So that wasn't so much that you
Just a
didn't
good
lie.
guesser.
You took a swing in the dark at something gross, and it turned out to be true.
And I nailed it.
You maybe nailed it. I don't know if they actually tossed each other salads. There's videos available though, so we can check.
Ooh,
So-
delicious. That'll be on our paid
That's on our
website.
OnlyFans.
Oh, speaking of which, we got a new website.
We did get a new website, and here's the
Yeah.
best part for our listeners.
PopSmokeMedia.com.
It's the same as the old website when you type it into the computer. It's just going to
Yes.
bring you to an updated, better version of the site.
And for those of you asking, EP Mike is no longer with the show. We parted on great terms. He finished his master's degree, and he's pursuing different sources of media.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's been putting up some quality content recently. I've been keeping track.
Yeah, we've been getting that question, so just to throw that out there. Okay, so back to these 2 salad tossers.
All right, so I'm gonna talk mostly about Leonard Thomas Lake, right? Because his buddy was kind of a little bit of a nutcase, like more so like he's boring is what I'm saying. So the thing about Leonard Lake that I found interesting is that first he did seek out a partner, which is kind of rare, right? So he and Charles Dick Nose both were Marines together, and
Fucking devil dog. What the fuck?
so here's the
I
thing.
blame their drill instructor.
The reason I mentioned they were Marines first is because I want to point out some of the similarities that they had with Marines that aren't serial killers, because I thought that would be a fun little aside.
Well,
Yeah, let's hear it.
being in the military will probably equip them with pretty knowledgeable ways of killing people. So,
Normally, you're right, 100%.
unless whatever their MOS is.
So
like,
here's the
fucking-
thing. The fun part about Lake is that Lake was apparently a very bright child, but when his parents separated around when he was age 6, he and his siblings went to go live with their grandmother, right? And so Lake, despite being very bright, also liked to habitually photograph his female siblings naked. And instead of discouraging this, Grandma was like, yeah, take more of them nude shots.
Fucking grandma was a pervert too?
Yeah, Grandma was 100% a pervert too.
What the fuck?
So
this is why I don't support Social Security. No, I'm kidding.
Anyway, moving on. So
come on, that was a solid joke.
So
I got nothing.
So because Grandma was all about this, right, and did not say, you're a dirty little pervert, don't do that. Right, like, sure, film sex, that's fine, whatever, but don't do it with your own siblings. This isn't West Virginia, for fuck's sake, right? So this became, like, the basis of him becoming obsessed with pornography, and this will come into play later on, which I think is fantastic, right? In a watch this case and see how wackadoodle people can be case sort of situation. Don't take this as any tacit approval, because it's not. Right? If I could have shot this guy like when he was age 6 to stop him from murdering people, I would have done it. Right? Oh, I would have strangled baby Hitler, like absolutely 100%. Right? Because I come with foreknowledge. That's the difference. Or
you come from the future.
Here's a better idea. You steal baby Hitler, right? And you raise him to be a good person. Snap. Yes,
He's still
queen.
going to be a narcissist.
Yeah, but at least I could direct that narcissism into something effective.
Like being a CEO.
Or a painter.
Yeah, apparently this, if you thought this podcast was not going to mention Hitler, apparently you don't know Alexander Pfeffer very well.
Correct yourself.
We were at Cracker Barrel, and he was like, yeah, but what about the Nazis? And the lady next to us was like, oh, damn.
Okay,
She's
first
eating by herself, too.
Hold
she was,
on.
like, having a great Sunday.
Wait a
and
second.
then AJ starts talking about Nazis
Don't
and
throw
racism,
me under the bus.
And I'm like, this is not the place.
I did not randomly bring up Nazis.
You
He
so
kind of did.
randomly brought up Nazis.
I wasn't random. So there was so my daughter was watching JoJo's Bizarre Adventures, which is an anime in which there's the main character is American, and there's a lot of wackadoodle stuff that happens because of anime, right?
Yes.
Like every time something ridiculous would happen, I'd look at her and be like, what the absolute shit? And she'd go, Dad, anime. I'm like,
and then crunch a chip.
and then crunch a Cheeto. And I'd be like, yes, okay, fair enough. So
Cha, Dad, you wouldn't understand. Cha, crunch.
What's that?
what the hell
My
is
impression
that?
of a teenager.
Weird, but okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the thing is, there's a character in there, and his name is like von Stronheim or something, and he's very clearly a Nazi. And they're doing the Nazi stuff you see in movies where they're researching the occult to get Hitler's special magic powers. This dude,
Is that something you see in movies about Nazis?
a lot.
Really?
Hellboy.
Yeah, Hellboy.
The Avengers.
Yeah.
With Red Skull.
Red Skull.
Like
yeah.
you see, it's a lot. It's a big
Hellboy.
thing. Hellboy.
Yeah. That's like kind of like the whole.
That's
pretense.
that's how they got.
Not
I
the
literally
new-
only
not the new
remember
one.
the Aquaman.
Not the new
creature
Hellboy,
that I had
the
a
original.
crush on when I
Yeah,
was
the
little.
original like Ron Perlman Hellboy.
Yeah.
I
Right.
know.
So
I can
long
only
story
imagine-
short,
So long story
Yeah.
short, the whole
Anyway.
thing was we were talking about JoJo's Bizarre Adventures, and there's a part where there's this Nazi, and for some reason, like despite being a Nazi piece of shit, because Nazis were pieces of shit, right? He conducts an act of self-sacrifice by blowing a grenade up in his own head, right? He like pulls the cable out of this grenade, sticks it against his own face, and blows himself up. Hey, good for you. You were a good person at the end. Nice, right? But for some reason, in an episode that I missed because I was blanked out doing something else, he comes back and he's a cyborg now. I'm doing air quotes. Cyborg now, and like he's got like a lens over one eye because his power level's over 9,000 or something. I don't really know why, but like all of a sudden he's got like this Street Fighter ass haircut, right? And he's got this like lens over one eye and a wire that plugs into his forehead.
The Terminator.
Right? And all of a sudden we're like, yay, von Stronheim is a good dude and he's helping us out fight this massive threat to the earth. You're
And
still
so
a Nazi
how
piece of
did-
shit.
how did this come up at Cracker Barrel?
Because we were just talking about because Dan, you like anime.
Yes.
And we were discussing it because you're the only human being I could talk to about anime that knows what the fuck is going on.
Yes.
And I had mentioned it, and you were like, I don't know, that one's even too weird for me.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's not my usual thing, but we were talking about the general plot line and some of the things that I thought were weird. And one of the things I thought were weird was the several dozen points throughout that show where the American from New York in 1938 is very much like, oh, bro, I don't want to like hurt you or something. And he's like, no, you must hurt me because whatever. And I'm like, if I have to kill this like all powerful evil, and the only way to do it is to chop the leg off of a Nazi, I'm not going to sit there and have a 30-minute internal monologue about, oh my God, like, do I want to cut this Nazi's leg off? I don't need a reason. He's a Nazi. I'm going to cut his freaking leg off.
And the woman next to us was very alarmed.
Yes, she was.
I think, no, but the guy that was on the other side, right? The one that was sitting next to you.
In his pajamas.
In his pajamas.
In his pajamas, which made me feel a lot better about what I was wearing.
Right?
Yeah.
He straight turned. He's like, I don't mean to be like, you know, like eavesdropping in your conversation or whatever, but like totally agree with your conversation.
Totally agree.
And I was like, what part of our conversation do you do? No, I'm not engaging.
Crunch.
Crunch.
So back to your serial killer.
Back to my serial killer. So this guy ended up, he went into the Marine Corps at some point. Oh, wait, hold on. Before I get into that, we talked about the pornographic tendencies. We talked about he extorted his sisters on a regular basis to do sexual things.
Weird.
Which is, again, strange because this is, again, not West Virginia. But then and here comes part of the psychopathic triad. He liked to dissolve rats and small animals in chemicals, which ended up being the way in which he would dispose of bodies in the future, right? But as a child and then a teenager, he was already refining his technique about corpse disposal and body manglement by...
Oh, damn.
Oh, damn.
See, the only problem with, like, being interested in how, like, small animals look, like, as they decompose, because I'm fairly enamored by, like, how skulls look, and I always have been. I think that they're pretty. I think that they're very, like, elegant in some ways.
And how late did you wet the bed?
No.
Just no.
What I'm getting at is that what's more important is that the individual is killing the animals rather than being interested in how the body of an animal works. Like, you can have kids who are interested in being vets when they're older, or you can have kids who are just creepy, like myself, or anything. Honestly, like, just being interested in how something works is kind of a sign of, like, intelligence, which is a good thing. But if you're doing the killing, that's the problem.
Yeah, I could see that.
So, for Daniel's sake, just real quick, I have two questions. When's the last time you wet the bed? And when's
you already asked that?
And when's the last time you didn't answer the question? And when's the last time you started a fire for no other reason than to watch the flames burn?
My sister's the one that just sets the fire. Yeah, she does. I've watched her. One summer, I would watch her. Like, we had a marble fireplace, and we had candles there because my mom really likes candles. And she would set it, and I'm sitting on the couch. So she'd set it. She's sitting like 5 feet away from me. She'd look at it, and then she'd blow it out and dip her fingers in the wax, like, immediately. And she did that for like a half hour before I was like, "What you doing?"
Okay, so you didn't set fires when you were a child.
No.
Okay, and you haven't wet the bed, let's say, in a significantly long period of time.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure because...
You done?
I can be creepy. There's nothing wrong with being creepy.
There's nothing wrong with being creepy. I think it's just...
I don't kill animals.
Look, I'm just looking out for him the same way he does for me. Because if you're going to have my man, all right, you ain't going to be murdering people and breaking his heart when he has to go to conjugal visits all the time.
Or at least let me know before you do that so we can plan it together, allegedly.
Oh, cute couple things.
Cute couple things.
Hashtag meet cute, M-E-A-T.
What?
What? What is that?
M-E-A-T, meet. Meet cute, like you're murdering people and then carving them up.
All right, then.
That's a legit joke from a legit show. It was a crap joke at the time, but I thought...
That's actually funny. I get it.
All right, so back to your serial killer.
Continue with your killer.
So, Mr. Lake, right? So we talked about the fact that he liked to dissolve things in acid, and he loved to do porn, and especially do it with his sisters, which was weird. So he gets out of high school, and he joins the Marine Corps, and he does 2 tours of duty in Vietnam as a radar electronics expert, right? He's a technician. So he works on radars. And I don't know enough about the craziness that is Nam to be able to tell you whether or not he actually saw any combat or not. Like, that's a whole separate thing.
So the Marine Corps didn't come in and was like, nah, he ain't see shit.
No, not to my knowledge, right? Like, there's plenty of people that probably were like, oh, yeah, I was in Nam, and they were stationed somewhere like Germany or something, right? Like, nothing was going bad.
Oh, yeah, I get you, because there was a lot of bases in Southeast Asia that were in direct support. Like, because, like, when I went to Jordan, we were in direct support of Afghanistan, but I wasn't in Afghanistan. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, like, I still got the NATO and the GWAT-E medal, but I wasn't in Afghanistan. It was just in support of Afghanistan because my Jordanians went to Afghanistan.
Exactly that. So this guy was in Vietnam. He was a radar electronics technician. And interestingly enough, while he was in Vietnam is when they diagnosed him with schizoid personality disorder, right? The DSM-5's probably changed over the years, but you can basically schizoid personality disorder, and then he had a delusional breakdown, right? And this is in Da Nang. So he's in the no shit, and then he has a breakdown. So he gets a medical discharge in 1971. He gets sent home. He goes back to San Jose and enrolls in San Jose University. But it's 1971, so he's like, oh, hey, you know what looks cool? Being a hippie. So no shit, this dude drops out, becomes a hippie, moves to a commune in San Francisco, gets married, and then the woman he marries dissolves the marriage after she finds out that he's making his own porn movies with just like whoever.
Yeah, that
Because
kind
he's
of puts a wrench in things.
Right. And the interesting thing for me about this is that she didn't break up with him because of the porn movies. Like, she was like, I'm not really down with the porn you've been secretly filming. Right? And he was like, come on, guy. And she was like,
Come on, guy.
yeah. So this guy, the wife left him not so much just because of the porn, but because the majority of his porn had bondage and sadomasochism in it. And not the kind of bondage that's fun where you like tie somebody up and like, but like kind of bondage where you're trying to cause damage, right? Like we talked about sexual sadism before.
A red flag.
A very big red flag. Like if you say your safe word, which is, you know, whatever it is, and if you're like pineapples and they're like, no, fuck you, and they keep punching you in the face, like you probably got the wrong safe word or the wrong partner. Just saying.
Wrong partner.
Yeah, what if afterwards he's like, pineapples? Like, and he pulls out like the brevity code sheet and it's like, we clearly agreed this means punch me in the face more. You're like, oh, my bad.
I was clearly in the wrong.
I apologize.
So then this guy goes out to a ranch called Greenfield Ranch. It was like 55,000 acres in the middle of bloody nowhere in Northern California, right? So then he marries this other chick that's her nickname is Cricket. So you can imagine she's probably a hippie chick too. And she becomes involved with his weird porn stuff.
Oh, man.
She's like,
the truest of all true hippie chicks.
Yeah, she's like, yeah, I'm totally down with appearing in multiple of your pornographic films.
Yeah, bro. Just like however you want to express yourself. Who am I to deny you the opportunity?
Whomst am I to stop you?
Whomst am I?
Whomst the ever-living fuck am I?
Oh my god.
So then, you know, he goes into all this crazy stuff. He starts like building this nuclear bunker in the settlement that he's living on, but at some point the owner of the land, because it wasn't him, was like, "No, I'll be having none of that shit, mate."
This is very clearly like him having an outburst of like schizo personality and having an episode where he's just not there.
Absolutely. Like he's just like,
I
murder people for fun.
What that is.
Yeah. I murder people for fun, and I like to have weird sex stuff going on video, but the Ruskies, that's my problem.
And can you elaborate on that when you said people don't know that's going on?
So, well, I was mostly referencing the listeners might not know what schizopersonality is.
Yeah, can you elaborate that on a little bit?
Schizophrenia is what this is in reference to. So schizophrenia is where you would have episodes of delirium pretty much where you don't know what's real and what's not real. So you could be having hallucinations that are either like visual or like auditory hallucinations. So you just do not know what is real and what isn't real. And usually they're pretty negative. So they could be like encouraging you to kill people. as this might be in his instance, or like schizopersonality where it's on a lesser extent than just regular schizophrenia.
Yeah, why can't a schizophrenic episode be like, hey, maybe you should eat some vegetables and go do some charity work?
That's right. We were talking about Son of Sam earlier, right? That was one of the guys we mentioned.
Yeah, he was also a veteran.
Right. So wasn't his thing that his dog told him to do it? Like his
Yes.
dog said, "Hey,
Mhm.
Satan's gonna eat your face if you don't do whatever."
Exactly.
Yeah, I would have fucked that dog up. I'd be
I'd've been
like,
like-
oh, really?
It plays on the paranoia of the individual and makes things pretty shitty.
Yeah, like, if I'm sitting here and, like, a dog comes up and he's like, yo, you need to murder these people, otherwise, like, Satan will do this. We're like, all right, well, this is the time where I need to kill the messenger. And then I just start filling the room full of uppercuts.
Well, I mean, I guess that depends on how adorable the dog is.
Nope. At that point in time, the dog ceased to be as adorable and ceased to start catching these monos.
Well, what if it's like a corgi with like a thick butt?
Extra monos.
What if it's Lucy?
Extra monos.
Oh no!
You don't think that Mike would have a problem with you giving extra monos
If
to
you
Lucy?
just started
think
kicking
Mike is
Lucy,
a paragon.
Mike would freak out
He
because
is
you're
a
the only one
paragon.
experiencing that.
Of truth and justice. All right? Mike is a paragon. He would understand that if Lucy is a messenger of Satan, that she deserves some monos. I'm not saying you need to kill her, but, you know, just like...
just several monos.
In the cage.
Yeah,
Now.
you know,
Like
Bad dog.
6.17 monos.
like, time out at least, you know?
You're getting back in your crate, you Satan worshipping animal. You start throwing holy water on Lucy.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, co-host Mike is far less suicidal now because he got an adorable puppy.
Yay!
It's so adorable
We're
that
so
even if it
happy
said
for
Satan
him.
messages, I'm pretty sure Mike would be like, "Haha, you silly scamp." I'm
But, like-
obviously not gonna murder people, but
he would
but
love
you-
it.
here's some treats. Be less Satan-y.
Yeah.
But also, to be fair, though,
To be fair, I was leaned back. I didn't
Far.
expect the to be fair, but I was not gonna leave you hanging, sir.
yeah, because he's smoking a cigarette into a Rockstar can.
Don't judge me.
But
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
but I think that if Mike was having that delirium, that he might look at the wings and whatever Diablo sauce and ghost pepper combination is on them. Like when Homer Simpson gets the chili pepper from Chief Wiggum. You know?
I'm pretty sure that if any Satan voices were coming from inside of Mike's apartment, like he'd look at Lucy and be like, "Oh, clearly can't be this wonderful animal that gives me so much love and support." And he's gonna
No.
look over to his kitchen and see all the Hordash orders sitting on the counter, and it's gonna be like, "Oh, it's the wings telling me to murder people."
You know, it's the soiled bed sheets that have gained sentience.
I was gonna say the congealed wings that have gained sentience, but any number of disgusting biological contaminants in Mike's apartment could probably gain sentience.
He's not even here to defend himself.
Oh, he'll hear this.
He'll hear this.
I know he will.
And he knows we love him and that his apartment is actually very clean for a single man.
That's very sweet of you to stick up for him.
Come on. You know who I am. I do that all the time.
So
You know who it is.
back to your serial killer.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to ask
Oh.
Sam where her SoundCloud link is.
Stop. I had to bite my tongue not to reply with black and yellow.
See, there you go. All right, so my nutcase, he ends up meeting this other Marine, Charles Ng, through a War Gamer magazine advertisement in 1981. So they didn't even
Classy.
right, they didn't even serve together directly. But in 1984, Ng was dishonorably discharged after serving time for theft and desertion. What did he steal? Guns. This dude stole just a buttload of guns from
Red flag.
Yeah. Thanks. Right? If your man is stealing firearms from the government, red flag. Right? But he stole all these guns from MCAS, it was K-Bay. He stole a lot of guns from K-Bay. And they immediately caught him because he was terrible at it.
Oh, speaking of which, the CO and the Sergeant Major of 3-6, the unit that lost the 2 rifles, both just got fired.
Well, that's what you get for polluting 3-6's great and historied memory.
Yeah, so please continue.
So, the two of them end up getting this cabin in the middle of nowhere. They described it even internally to each other as a dungeon, because of course they did. And this dude, before he even started doing his double team murders, had already killed his brother and his best man at his wedding.
What?
One of them was allegedly, so I don't know. They said they probably murdered his brother. No,
Allegedly.
he definitely murdered his brother. Anyway, so the two of them get together, and they start a pattern of rape, torture, and murder. And they have, some of their girlfriends and some of their like friends that they know, some of their friends' kids, which is gross, right? And they just men, infants, and all this other stuff they'd immediately kill. But the women they would rape and torture, and they would videotape a lot of this. So they're basically just making weird porn.
Fuck them.
Yeah, absolutely. Fuck them.
Just all the fucks to them. Fuck them.
And something Sam was saying earlier is, and this is a quote from a show that I liked, where like the FBI agent comes to brief the president, and he's like, "Oh yeah, we caught him because of this busted taillight." And he's like, "Really? 2 years of investigation? That's what you came up with?" And he's like, "In my 13 years in the bureau, I've found that no amount of money, time, or manpower will ever equal a person being exceedingly stupid."
Wow. 2-year investigation foiled by a taillight being out.
Well, my guy gets busted because he asks the police if he won't get caught by doing a specific thing that he gets caught for.
Okay.
And then says, "Tell me the truth. You better promise," or something like that. And he's just like, "Be honest. Will this get me caught?" And they're like, "Of course not."
That's almost a sweet level of naivete.
Yeah, it's like that.
The worst.
The guy who called the cops, and he's just like, how much trouble can you get in for cooking crystal meth? And they're like, "Is this Mr. Jones?" And he's like, "No." And they're like, "We have caller ID." And he's just like, well, I'm not cooking crystal meth." And like, "All right, well, we're sending some cops over." He's like, "All right, cool. We'll see you guys soon."
Right. And so here's what I love about this, right? This is how stupid these idiots are. So Charles Dickbag, the accomplice, he gets caught shoplifting a vice from a hardware store, and he flees the scene. Like, they catch him. They're like, "Hey, you, stop stealing that vice." And he's like, "Disregard the constabulary." And runs out. So that happened. And then Lake drives to the store in order to pay for it, in order to keep the fuzz from figuring out what's going on. But when they show up, the cops are already there. The officers notice that he looks nothing like the very short Chinese gentleman that stole the thing, and so that's when they make like the connection. And they're like, "Okay, so we got this weirdo and this other weirdo." So they end up doing a bunch of investigatory whatnot. We're not into giving out details about how police run their investigations and catch serial killers because we want them to keep being able to do so. But essentially, he gets arrested for a number of things. One is having a weapon with a suppressor that he's not supposed to have. And at the time, they'd fingerprinted it. So they get this guy's fingerprints, Lake, and they find out who he is, and they arrest him, right? And they're like, "You had something to do with these murders." But Lake knew that this was a possibility and had sewn cyanide capsules into his clothes. So he takes the cyanide capsules, thinking like on a movie, he's going to bite down in the capsule, foam a little at the mouth, and be dead right thereafter. Not so much. Took that motherfucker 4 days to eat.
4 fucking days.
4 days.
Of just agonizing in poison death.
I mean, not as long as he should have, but certainly longer than he expected.
Again, fuck that guy.
Yeah, fuck that guy. And, I mean, not literally because he was into porn, so, but.
Yeah, and he probably like it.
Did you know that cyanide is supposed to smell or taste faintly of almonds?
Yes.
Almonds, eh?
Not everyone will actually get that, though. There's like some percentage.
Well, I mean, it's not exactly like you can ask him.
Some people can. The bad guy from one of the James Bond movies. That's why his mouth was all fucked up. Javier Bardem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you said almonds then? Almonds or almonds?
Did you say almonds?
Almonds.
Some people say it like that.
Yeah,
some
wrong
say,
people.
Yeah.
Wow.
Pecans or pecans.
Pecans.
It just doesn't.
No.
Oh.
It's pecans. If you say pecans, then
Aren't you from the South?
yes, I'm from as deep south as you can get before
I
you get
wasn't
to
asking you. I was saying if you say it like that.
I'm
Yeah,
saying
she wasn't asking you, Alexander.
I am from the deep south. I'm from as deep south as you can get without being from the bottom part of Florida, where you stop being south and southern and start being like Cuban.
Yeah.
And we say pecans because we're not weird.
So I was in Afghanistan, and our corpsman was like, "Hey, do you guys want some pecans?" And I was about to jump down his fucking throat and be like, "Oh, it's pecans, blah, blah, blah." And he's like, "Yeah, this is from my family's pecan farm because we own a pecan farm in California." And I was just like, fuck, all right.
No, that's not an excuse because my Uncle Dub, D-U-B, right? I had an uncle named Dub, and that is about as southern Alabama, Georgia as you can get, right? And when I said Alabama and Georgia, this old twang came out. So I had an Uncle Dub that had a pecan farm, and I remember, it's one of my few childhood memories that I remember it and was like, remember walking through the pecan trees and such, because I was like, what the fuck am I supposed to do on a pecan farm when there's a bunch of old people around? And so it was a pecan farm with
Somebody had
pecans.
tomatoes.
I don't think actually says tomato though, do they?
I feel like older people.
British people do.
Oh yeah, because they eat tomatoes with breakfast. Because like, say you wake up in the morning, you're like, my name's John Gones and I'm the cunt, and I want to eat baked beans and tomatoes for breakfast.
But
Hey.
I want a baguette and a croissant.
You know what? Gareth Jones is a true Brit, and he would never eat a croissant for breakfast because he doesn't eat failure that early in the morning.
He is Welsh.
Yeah, Welsh can be British.
Can they now?
Croissants
Yeah.
are good.
But British aren't always Welsh.
Correct. So British is the all-encompassing to explain Welsh,
Yes.
British, or Welsh, English, Scottish, and Irish are
And
all.
how many of
British.
them are cunts?
Well, it depends on who you talk to. I'm Welsh, and I say that all the
Most certainly a cunt.
right. So I'm a bit of a cunt, but the English
Yeah.
are certainly cunts.
So what you're saying is some, if not most, of the people that are Brits are cunts.
But, yes. I mean,
And he could say that.
I waffled a little bit just because I think most people generally are cunts, but also the English can just. I mean, the only thing the English and the Welsh really agree on is that the French can suck it.
So what are your thoughts on the Queen as a Welshman?
You know what?
Yes.
I think the Queen is a lovely woman, and she's done a fantastic job.
Yeah.
During the period of time in which the monarchy still had some kind of sway. Now they're kind of more of a figurehead thing.
Is
but
she a serial killer?
She's a
absolutely
lizard.
not.
How do you know?
Because serial killers derive the pleasure from murdering themselves. She has people sent out to do that thing.
So she has assassins, is what you're saying.
She has the British military.
She's
Assassins.
just diabolical. Is that it? Is that the word we want to assign to the queen?
No, I do not want to assign the word diabolical.
I
to the
love
Queen.
her.
She's
She's great. She can't
is-
die just like Betty White.
Exactly.
They're
She's
not
wonderful.
allowed to.
We
I hope
will
they're
all,
safe during this time.
our bones will be
Pandemic.
bleaching in the sun, and the Queen and Betty White will be the only two left on the planet, and
Having
they will.
tea together.
No, they won't be having tea together. They'll have to
They'll
fight.
be lovers.
They'll have to.
Yes.
They'll have to fight with swords to determine which one of them gets to be the Highlander.
Why can't they be friends?
And the loser has to be the bottom.
No, they,
We're going to get so much hate mail for that.
you're gonna get a hate mail. I'm sitting here defending the Queen.
At Apollo 3031,
It's so
if you
funny.
disagree with Betty White and the Queen being lovers.
Look, if that's their thing, if that's what they want, hey, hashtag 2020.
Yes.
Right. I'm all about it. I'm not hating. I'm just saying I find that unlikely because both of them are so long lived. There's no way that even despite their mutual respect and admiration for each other, that they won't have to have an anime style Highlander fight in which one of them will inevitably have to cut the other one's head off.
Okay.
Because there has to be only one.
And
That's
how
the
does this relate
rules.
to your serial killer?
It doesn't. I just think it's important to note that when the time comes and someone has to put money on which one of them is going to be the Highlander,
Yes.
I have my money on Queen Elizabeth.
Yeah, I would say that's a safe bet.
Betty White's American, so she's scrappy, right?
Yep.
She's going to come with some dirty plays. She's going to throw some sand in the Queen's eyes. I get it. But the Queen's got just generations and centuries of sense memory of putting her boot heels on the Irish and my people. So 100% the Queen's got some tricks of her own, and she's gonna fuck Betty White up.
Right on.
Mad
Thank you.
mad respect though. It's gonna be one of those things where like the head lops off and you see Betty White's head roll across the floor.
Jesus.
It winks because
And-
the head
right.
stays alive for 26 seconds after it gets cut off.
Exactly.
Wow.
And then the Queen's gonna say, you know what? I didn't want to have to do that, but them's the rules. You know, mad respect. And then she throws a gang sign up to God and calls it.
Yeah, that's when like Shawn Michaels had to deliver the sweet chin music to Ric Flair to put him into retirement, and he was like, "I'm sorry, I love you." Whap.
Exactly. Sometimes you know, You want to be the king, you gotta kill the king. Them's the breaks.
So, anything else about your serial killer that we need to know?
Well, he took the cyanide capsule, and then it took him 4 days to die because, he's a piece of shit and apparently didn't take enough cyanide or didn't take the right
it's
stuff.
a good thing. He
Right?
deserves it.
No, I'm all about it. I'm saying that I wish it had taken longer, right?
Sure.
I wish he'd had one of those traumatic experiences like Javier Bardem's character in that James Bond movie where like half his face got fucked off and he had to put that giant metal thing in his skull. But even that would have been too cool. Like that would have made him interesting, and he wasn't. He was just a pornography obsessed weirdo. And his partner is actually currently in San Quentin because he's a turd. So he ends up getting busted later on. I don't want to really spend a lot of time on him. He was also a Marine, but only barely. And he stole a bunch of guns from MCAS K-Bay. And so he got caught or booted out early. And he was basically like, he was the sub. Like in any partnered, you laugh, any partnered relationship between serial killers, there's a dominant and a submissive. And it doesn't mean that they're having sex with each other because I know that's what dom and sub usually.
No, it's like the
right.
Like the Emperor and Darth Vader.
Exactly. You always have two Sith, right? You have the master and the apprentice, right?
Sam's like, that's not accurate at all.
No, I'm just trying to think of. I'm trying to think.
She doesn't know enough about Sith to be able to.
I'm trying to think of a perfect example that is also serial killers. Well, killers, and I can't. Columbine. Sorry.
Right.
I couldn't think.
Columbine's perfect. Like
Columbine is perfect because who is there's a ringleader and then there's.
I would like to specify that we're not saying Columbine was perfect. We're
Columbine's
just saying
a perfect
it is an example.
Right. If you're going
Columbine
to
is terrible, and the two shits that decided to do that had no actual grasp on how the world worked and are terrible human beings.
They weren't even good at IEDs.
So, now Samantha, who is the former military serial killer that you are going to highlight?
Well, a lot of people probably know this one simply because he's such a dick. He's such an idiot about everything he's ever done.
Tell me how you really feel.
I really hate this guy. Not to say that I don't hate every serial killer. I think that they're all awful. But Dennis Rader, specifically, there's just something about him that makes him extra worse than you're just any other infamous serial killer.
No, don't get me wrong, because anytime I have to be stuck in traffic, I'm mad. But if it's because of a fucking goose, it's like extra fucking injury to insult. So I get what you're saying. Like, it's bad, but like, specifically, fuck this guy.
Dennis Rader as a person was going to be a living nightmare for anyone who came into contact with him. He was probably going to be super annoying, a know-it-all of some sort, and just too much. And you just wanted to strangle him. It's the kind of person that when you see their face, you're just like, I just want to punch you in the face.
Punch his face.
For free.
For free.
But you lop on the fact that he's a serial killer and it makes him infinitely worse.
So what branch did he serve in?
He served in the Air Force, and his record is described as unremarkable, which really, I guess they don't go into his...
You bow-legged bitch.
I guess they don't go into his military background as much because it was only for 4 years, and he probably didn't do much in that short amount of time. But this guy's just the worst. So what he's best known for is the fact that he's killed 10 people over the span of 17 years, which goes into what we earlier had said about a cool-off period. He had massive cool-off periods.
Oh, wow.
So this guy, he was very cocky, which goes into the narcissism where he's just like, oh yeah, I can do whatever I want. His first kill was a family of 4 people he killed, and then 3 of the children he came back from school and found them.
That's fucked
it's
up.
It's absolutely terrible. So Dennis Rader is nicknamed himself the BTK killer, which is bind, torture, and kill killer. He's not smart.
Blindly taking cocks, and cocks is spelled with a K.
Nice. Well, he also gave himself other possible nicknames when he sent a letter into the police begging them to give him any kind of attention, because that was his whole motive, was to get the attention, because he was so inspired by Son of Sam and Jack the Ripper and the Hillside Strangler. He was just like, I want that glory. And that's what you see in a lot of serial killers is that they want some type of glory and they can't find that because they're too bland and boring to find that on their own and do something helpful and useful to society. So they just decide, I'm just going to kill because that's the easiest thing to do. So other names that he suggested in his letter was the Wichita Strangler, the Poetic Strangler, the Asphyxiator, the Garrote Phantom, the Bondage Strangler, and the Wichita Hangman.
Those are all super fucking lame nicknames.
They're
too.
so awful. They're so terrible.
Like, this dude takes himself way too seriously.
Oh, exactly. That's the whole... He, wrote poems about his victims, and he would send it in to the local news station, which was called Cake, and the police. So he would just send in poems about his victims, kind of like either before or of victims that he had after he had done it.
So, AJ, as a man who writes poetry, what's your take on that?
What a turd.
He's just the worst.
And his poetry was terrible.
His poetry was absolutely
The
awful.
worst.
Like, nobody's expecting Lord Byron, but at least don't be, like, equivalent to some 18-year-old angsty piece of shit at
Well, that's
Berkeley.
exactly what his personality,
Yeah, look, he
managed
was
to
no
be.
T-Pain who rhymed mansion
With Wisconsin.
with Wisconsin. So he was not. He was no warrior poet like like Ice Cube.
I mean, you gotta love Ice Cube. What was it, Ice Cube, or was it Ice T that's on
Ice
SVU?
T was on SVU. Ice Cube is the guy who said, "If one has not required the use of his AK, 'twas a good day."
Hey, you know what I liked about Tupac?
What's that?
Tupac once said, "Look, just because I don't want this dude eating at my table, don't mean I don't want him to eat. I just don't want him to eat with me."
That makes sense. He also said, "Can a brother get a little peace? There's war in the streets and war in the Middle East." 20 years ago. Still
Same.
true to this day. It held up.
Hashtag RIP Tupac.
No. He's not.
Shh, we're not supposed to tell people about that.
But we went all the way to Cuba to meet him.
Bruh. That's why we're not supposed to tell people about that.
But we went all the way to Cuba. Havana's a beautiful city.
Havana is a beautiful city. I will agree with you on that. Absolutely, 100%.
Samantha.
Okay.
She's like, "Are you boys done?"
Well, I'm just looking over my research. But yeah, so he would send in really ridiculous letters and poetry into the news stations and the police, and that's really ultimately how he ended up getting caught, was that he just wanted to get caught. And that's the thing that you see in a lot of serial killers, is that they want to get caught. They want the attention because it's just so exciting for them, because they think they're too smart to get caught, and it's part of the game, and they're stupid. So in the end, he unfortunately had ended up killing 10 people. His goal was to kill more women that he thought were attractive. Like, his whole thing is bind, torture, kill, and he gets off on it. He does something terrible in his very first kill that kind of plays into the fact that he's also a pedophile, and it's disgusting and disturbing, and I'm not going to go into it, but I know what it is.
Turd.
Yeah, he's just the worst. Not
Yeah,
only does
feel
he kill people, not only is he an annoying piece of shit, but he's also a pedophile, so this guy's just the worst.
Yeah, feel free to look more into him if you want. If not, that's fine too. Is this guy still alive?
I believe that he is. He's serving 10 life sentences.
Yo, what if we find out where this dude is and then just send him mail and being like, "Your poetry sucks"?
Bro, send his poetry to all kinds of different elite colleges that
Yeah.
do poetry and whatever. But Berkeley, hashtag roast me, right?
Well, the thing is
I just-
that he was in he was taking classes at the local university at the time, and he was in an English class, and that's why he was writing poetry, because he's just I'm so intellectual. I'm gonna write poetry. I'm gonna give myself nicknames because I want the legacy of being a serial killer.
That's why you roast him until he's dead.
Exactly.
And people now are a lot more savage
As
in
they
their
should be.
roasting than they used to be. So he will not be ready for it, because be like, "Okay, boomer, here you go. Here's your roast." And then you'll find him swinging from the rafters in his cell like Jeffrey Epstein, and be like, "Ha-ha, at least he did it himself."
Yeah. There you go.
All right. Anything else we need to know about this guy?
So when he finally got caught, the letter he had sent into the police that tipped him off was he was asking if he could get tracked back by using a floppy disk because he wanted to give them more tips as to how to like catch him, because he wanted to prove that he was just so smart that he
He's like the
wouldn't get caught.
Riddler.
I guess.
Yeah.
Sure. I don't know.
You don't have to admit that. You can feel like, yeah,
I
sure.
mean,
I appreciate your candor.
I'm sorry.
The villain from Batman in green suit, he likes to leave riddles.
Oh, okay.
That might have been a clue.
The Green Lantern. Anyway.
Oh my god.
Anyway. But so he was gonna leave a floppy disk for the police officers for them to find, and he's like, you guys can't track this back to wherever I'm like taking all my information and like putting it on the floppy disk, right? Which was his church, because he was one of the leaders at his church, which is perfect. And they were like, and in his letter, he's literally like, be honest, can you track me back with this floppy disk? And they're like, of course not. And then they were able to track him back. And he was the only one that uses the fucking computer, too. So it's just like, Dennis Rader. Dennis, you know anything about this floppy disk? And it's like, you caught me. So that's...
What a boot.
He's literally the worst person ever. I
hate
listen
this guy so much.
I hate this guy so much. It's just, I listen to a lot of true crime, and a lot of podcasts do segments on Dennis Rader because he's such a ultimate fuck up, and he's just so notorious because he has killed quite a few people, which makes him so notorious. But the fact that he gives himself names makes him just like so easy to hate even more, because it's like, do you know how serious the things that you're doing are, and you just go around trying to call yourself the asphyxiator?
I'm gonna asphyxiate this dick.
I hope he chokes.
I would imagine he probably would.
No, he
Okay.
liked girls.
So
I'm sorry, what was that, Sam?
He liked girls.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. Anything
Apparently
else?
he liked to get he liked to fuck Willie Mammoth.
Yeah.
All right, so I think that brings an end to our serial killer episode. Yeah, we got new headphones for this, so we're gonna go back and listen to it and see how it sounds.
Wah 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 wah.
Okay, so we're going to be doing a lot more episodes during this next week or so. I'm waiting for Mike to get his sweet cheeks up here so we can do an official episode.
Sweet cheeks.
Yeah, so if you have any ideas for any topics, or if you want us to talk about anything specific, make sure to reach out to us. info@popsmokemedia.com is our email. We're on Instagram and Facebook. The Smoke Pit, you can find us there. popsmokemedia.com is our website. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.